Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Lovely morning to you. I do hope that you have the springs in your steps all through these days. The fifth day and the last month of the year 2022. It's the beginning of another new week, and we're glad to have you on Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, reaching you live from Star Times DTT channel 190 and all of our social media handles, most especially on YouTube at Western Spring Television, where we encourage you to subscribe to that channel on YouTube. You can also check us out on other social media handles on Instagram and on Facebook at Western Spring Television, and indeed on Twitter, that's WSTV_NG. Femi Olanikwekun is my name. It's a good morning, a good, lovely Monday morning, Emmanuel.
Of course, it's a very lovely Monday morning. Good morning once again. My name is Emmanuel Ujadigere. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. It's the festive period. You can smell the rice and chicken in the air already.
Oh, even as early as the 5th of December.
Yes.
Emmanuel, what are you smelling?
My neighbor's food, actually. You can smell you can see the decorations coming out, and we do hope that it's going to be a very beautiful one. Thank you for joining us, and we'll hope to bring you sweet and wonderful, juicy stories this morning.
Well, so, I mean, I'd like to see more of the Christmas trees decorations.
Yes.
Not so much I've seen here in Osun. I was out of the state over the weekend and I saw lovely designs. I also say, well, this is very expensive. I mean, from where I'm coming, but it's lovely. It's a sight to behold.
Yes,
I'd like to see more of that also here in Osun.
There's Sakpa in Osun State, so we can't afford it until maybe 23rd, 24th.
I think Sakpa affects everywhere, not only at the
Yeah.
Well, let's take this break. When we return, we'll bring you the newspapers. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Let's get started now with the papers, and we will start with the This Day newspaper. The This Day newspaper is what we're starting with. The banner headline here is, with poverty, education, health in focus, presidential hopefuls mull solutions at Arise Town Hall. Atiku, I'll remove bottlenecks, wastages in government. Obi, I'm ready to channel subsidy funds to the key sectors. So ensuring financial autonomy for LGAs is critical. That's the banner headline of the This Day newspaper this morning. There's an headline below the nameplate. Buhari will need urgent action, a plan against terrorism in West Africa. Wants new ECOWAS management to complete ongoing reforms, place unconstitutional changes in sub-region. That's on that story, and also just immediately under the nameplate is about Osun here. Adeleke Oyetola said, many traps for me, I'm yanking them off. Okay, that's from here in Osun State, and just above the nameplate, CBN offered 7.33 trillion naira treasury bills in 6 months. The make of that what you will. I'm sure economists will have an insight into what that really is. So what we have, the banner headline is about the town hall, the Arise Town Hall. 3 of the big 4 presidential candidates are there. 1 is Mason. Okay, so that's it about the Disney newspaper, Emmanuel.
Well, that's that about it. We hope that those presidential candidates, if any of them wins, can bring their promises to light. To be interesting to see the local government gets their financial autonomy. From the DC newspaper, we'll move on to The Nation this morning, Monday the 5th December 2022. The banner headline says, ex-depot price hits 225 naira per litre as petrol scarcity persists. Ex-depot price hits 225 naira per litre as petrol scarcity persists. That's the banner headline on The Nation newspaper this morning. Marketers urge NNPCL to stock product for 60 days. Pricing gap widens to 34%. That's what you have on the banner headline this morning. And it's again worrisome, 225 naira per litre.
I mean, that's at the depot.
Yeah.
And so what does the filling stations. What do they sell at the filling stations? So in most part of the state, outside of some of those who are selling at control prices, most people are getting petrol for between 300 and 330 naira. And coming in this morning, the NNPC around Lameko roundabout, you see the queues stretching from the gate going straight to Okefia this morning. Last week, it was the same with Bovis. Some of the other filling stations around that area. And it's worrying. Someone shared his experience with me last week, and Emmanuel is terrible. He's an old man who said he spent 24 hours within 3 days queuing for fuel. So the first day, he said he spent 1.5 hours, and then it was unlucky, he couldn't get. The second day, he returned. That was on a Thursday. He got at 7 a.m., left after 7 p.m., and still did not get fuel. That was 12 hours. Then the following day, he went back again, spent another almost 8 hours. No, another almost 11 hours. So altogether, he had almost 24 hours within 3 days just to buy fuel. So look at the lost man hours, look at the lost productive hours, look at some people who fall sick.
Yes, the physical and emotional stress.
Emotional stress. And it's just disturbing that our leaders are unable to arrest this situation. Instead, it's getting worse.
Yeah, for situations like this, one would be tempted to say that it is because they are not affected. If they are very much affected, they would sort it out. I find it very selfish. I'd like to give an instance about insecurity where the son of a serving minister was kidnapped, I think 2019, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and within 24 hours he was rescued. But if it were the son of, you have Leah Sharibu is still in prison because he's in custody of terrorists. So until it hits close to home for these people, they really most times don't bother, because they can afford it and we cannot afford it.
That's very sad.
Very sad.
Very
sad. Still on the Nation newspaper, Lagosians just below that picture of Tinubu and his associates. Lagosians likely to ride on blue light rail before Christmas. That's coming from Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and Governors Gbajabiamila and others with Tinubu in UK. It's quite interesting. There was a town hall debate going on, and a leading presidential candidate was not even in the country at the moment.
No, they are doing a room hall in the UK.
Room hall, not a town hall.
Room hall in the UK.
Oh, well. And down below the newspaper, naval rating, kill policeman, injure others in Lagos. Bandits shoot imam. That's a very sad one. Above the nameplate, how to curtail rising debt profile by DMO, Debt Management Office. 500 doctors left in 2 years, says Medical Council. Adeleke's certificate, my life under threat, says PDP chieftain. You have that story on page 4 of the Nation newspaper this morning. And just below the nameplate, lovers bury newborn alive. Wow. And grandma expectant mom held for drugs. That's what you have on the Nation newspaper. I'm very worried about the numbers of doctors leaving the country. So who would take care of who? I already said I would go learn. I would go join, become a doctor.
Well, so someone made a very disturbing joke, last week. We laughed, but then retrospectively, I felt it was a very bad one. And talks about the situation of the country and what we are likely going to face in the coming years if care is not taken to arrest this, Japa wave. And he said, Femi, at this rate, Nigerians should prepare to be treated by a small doctor. And traditional doctors, at this rate, because almost everyone, is leaving. You see departments where that friend shared with me, he has also joined the train. He has moved on. He's a medical doctor with very rich experience. And he said, my former department put out adverts to recruit. And he said, we had only 5 applicants who applied. And of them, only 2 showed up. He said, and that was not the case before, that you have tens of people applying, rushing, even lobbying to be part of it. But he said now, right before these guys leave medical school, they're already planning to leave. So, and then he said they also have situations where even consultants are now leaving. So if those who are coming in after housemanship, are leaving, then those who ordinarily should train them to become like them are also leaving. It's a big problem. And he said the attention is more on doctors, that is even worse happening with nurses, because it's easier for them. According to him, it's, the processes seems to be more straightforward for nurses than with doctors. Number of exams that you get to write here before you leave. And so, but we seem not to have identified it as a problem, let alone preferring solutions.
Yeah, because we are the ones who get to suffer it. There are people who can afford to jet out of the country. But those of us that will probably go and learn how to use herbs and prayers to push our medical situations.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the Punch newspaper this morning. The Punch newspaper has as its banner headline, Bauchi Gombe fight over new oil wells. With the riders, 4 oil wells are in Gombe. Boundary Commission hypocritical, says Governor's special advisor. Kolmani is in Gombe. Late NNPC GMD misled Buhari. Niger Delta scenario looms. Residents. Matter taking different dimension. Bauchi governor will consult. Commissioner assures stakeholders. We've not even begun to earn money
From the oil.
but you know, here Bauchi and Gombe are fighting over this. I hope it's settled amicably though. I hope it doesn't generate into violence between some of the communities and the border community between the border area between Bauchi and Gombe State.
Well, it was bound to happen. It's new, it's novel, and everyone wants to lay claims to the oil wells. 4 oil wells are in Gombe. Boundary Commission hypocritical. Everybody wants to say, okay, I have more of the oil and all of that.
It's more in my side.
Yeah, so now
you know.
it's incumbent on the government to step in before it's too late, you know, to avoid. You can see that Niger Delta scenario is looming. That's what some of the residents are saying. Before you know it becomes a free-for-all, and then you start having issues that will compound already existing issues. So the government needs to take urgent and drastic measures. Curtail that, bring all the warring parties, as it were now, to the table and talk about these things. What are we doing? How are we going forward? How do we amicably resolve this to avoid a catastrophe?
All right, so well, just beside the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, Atiku Obi Kwankwanso lock horns at town hall meeting. That's on page 46 of the Punch newspaper. You get to know. That was what we talked about the other time about the last of the big 4 not attending. Just above the nameplate, Core Network, INEC to meet NCC, Telcos Tuesday. Have you witnessed that, Porter? Have you experienced it of late?
It's really terrible.
It's frustrating.
You can barely send a WhatsApp message. You can even barely upload something on WhatsApp.
No, I mean, so that's even on the data side.
Yes.
But even as regards making calls.
Oh, yes.
It keeps dropping.
Someone tried to call me yesterday, and I saw the notification, 5 missed calls. And then when I called back, I told the person I didn't hear my phone ring. And she said she heard it was just beep.
And then drops.
And then drops, yes.
Beep. And then, I mean, it's been happening for some months. And then, I don't know what explanation we have, but someone was saying, perhaps, the engineers, the technical guys, have all jackpot.
It's worrisome.
Well, just beside that is Nigeria's telecom subscribers hit 214 million. 214 million. And marketers resort to private depots. Shortage hit NNPC. That's part of the reason. I mean, the multiplier effect of what we witnessing here now as regards fuel scarcity and the rise in the price, a hike. Just below the pictures of the president and some other people, you know, commissioning a project, we have Buhari 6 improved security in ECOWAS region. Buhari 6 improved security in ECOWAS region. FG unveils new curriculum for varsities today. I think that's been long in coming. It's good. It's coming. I mean, you had instances where where some of our curricula are outdated, such that issues of the repetitive, the world has moved on. You know, a lot of changes in the system already. Police Arequipa State accused of plotting murder suspects release. And that's the last on the Punch newspaper this morning.
Well, away from the Punch newspaper to the Guardian this morning, the Guardian newspaper, contempt. Court OK suit seeking removal of Chief of Army Staff. That's just below the nameplate. Tinubu absent as Atiku Obi Kwakwanso spar at a Rice TV debate. Serap sues Buhari over failure to probe alleged missing trillions in ecological funds. And the banner headline there says, after 251 days, Abuja-Kaduna rail service resumes amid 6.6 billion naira losses. You have a number of riders there. NRC FG only lost 113 million naira to Abuja Kaduna Railway closure. Fare hike takes effect today. We increased fares due to diesel cost, improved security, says Okiria. IGP assures of safety, deploys personnel en route, operational coaches. Experts insist not safe to travel by train unless there is aerial surveillance, armed drone patrol. Abuja Kaduna Highway to be completed first quarter 2023, Minister assures. It's quite encouraging, quite okay to see that the rail has resumed. Well, how safe is it?
Okay, so I mean, the minister, I mean, the head of the Railway Corporation is saying it's because of safety measures also, and alongside the cost of diesel, that's why they had to increase the fares. But it's good that the rail line is resuming for Abuja Kaduna Way, but then it's also disappointing that this is amidst losses, 6.6 billion naira. You know, I mean, this is not a profitable venture. Something need to be done about it. Perhaps I have used the Lagos Ibadan on before. It's such a lovely service, but I don't know how sustainable it is in terms of profit. Except I reckon government is still subsidizing as of now. And economically, I'm not sure it's that cheap, except maybe you're going with loads. If I'm not mistaken, the Lagos Ibadan fare for the standard coach, it should be 2,600. Now, if you're using the business coach, it's 4,000 naira. But then you are not troubled by traffic, and you get to time. But it's actually also a longer journey, because I think from Lagos to Ibadan, it takes like almost 3 hours. Oh. Yes. But then you're comfortable. Even the AC is blowing on your head. You can charge your phone, and everything
that's really sweet.
It's interesting. But I'm afraid that they will still need to jack it up a bit again to make it sustainable, and then maybe increase the coaches and also increase the number of times they just travel in the morning and then in the evening now. But we need to do more to make, because government cannot continue to subsidize this particular product. I mean, if they're losing 6.6 billion, it's not because they've been away for long. It's also because the fares, compared with the cost of maintenance operations, is way below what it should be.
Well, we hope that is really sorted out. Away from that story, still on the Guardian newspaper, Buhari charges new ECOWAS management to complete ongoing reforms. Naira redesign. Any attempt to reduce cash holding will cripple economy. That's all you have on the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Okay, and the final daily we'll be looking at today is the Daily Trust newspaper. And the banner headline is about security. Bandits abduct 46 in Katsina villages attacks. For the riders, students, worshippers, children among victims. Imam, others wounded. Kidnappers demand new Naira notes for ransom. We've rescued 4, chasing the attackers. That's according to the police. And just under the nameplate, NNPC, Chevron secures 610 billion naira funding to drill 37 oil wells. And Buhari rules unconstitutional regime changes in West Africa. IPOB behind attack on Imo INEC office. That's according to the police. INEC tracks 52 campaign incidents in 2 months. ASP stabbed to death as naval police officers clash in Lagos. Atiku Obi Kwankwanso renew pledges at a Rise TV CDD town hall. Okay.
Well, worrisome for me is the fact that we've gotten used to abductions in Nigeria. I mean, it's just like every other news story. Yeah. And it's like we've come to terms with it, that there's really nothing serious. Well, it's just another abduction. We'll move on with our lives and all of that. For how long are we going to make it a part of our daily existence? I mean, sometimes I believe that some people in the north may go out expecting to be kidnapped, to be abducted.
It's not bad.
And so when they come back, they are very, thank God I didn't get abducted today. It's really terrible, And then just below the nameplate, we still have the reminder of the 11 schoolgirls of FGC Benin Yari who have now spent 537 days in captivity, and 1 student of Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, who has now spent 510 days in captivity. Now you want to wonder, what becomes of the people who are kidnapped, who are abducted, what are the psychological effects, the physical effects? You know, some of them are married off, some of them are sexually assaulted and abused, and then they come back totally bruised, physically and psychologically. And so what becomes of them? How do you reintegrate them into the society? How do you make them live normal lives? How do they deal with the PTSD? And then students, worshippers, children among victims. I mean, this is we are tilting towards if not a failed state, a failing state, especially in the Northeast. And now kidnappers demanding new naira notes for ransom. We've rescued 4, chasing the attackers. That's the police. I mean, it's worrisome. It
is worrisome. And I think it's also symptomatic of the way Nigerians take issues because most times when some of these issues happen, we just move on.
Yes. Yeah,
after some time, we get used to it, and then we develop coping mechanisms. And as such, we just find a way of managing the situation, and then we move on. So it becomes part of us. And I mean, that's what we do, but it's quite unfortunate. This is the existence of man. This is the primary responsibility of the state to guarantee the safety and the welfare of citizens. And we are failing in that regard. And we're failing, as Trump then will say, we're failing bigly. This is very terrible. Abductions here and there, killings, students, worshippers. It's horrible. Some of the figures, for those who do, security reviews of the country, pale into insignificance. I mean, what is happening in Syria, in war-torn parts of the world, those where we have active war situation actually going on. Some of the deaths they record are not as high as what we record here in Nigeria on a weekly basis sometimes. And so it's worrisome that we're not at war. What we have is sort of an insurgency in the east, and then in some parts of militancy, banditry there. But then we're churning out dead figures as high as that, similar to what's happening in active war situations.
Yes, where chemical weapons are used, where warplanes are used, and it's unfortunate.
We need to do more as a people, as our leaders, and also as regards the lead also. But so that's that about the papers this morning. We'll take a break. When we return, hopefully we'll be coming back with our guest on Morning Spring, on Western Spring Television. Remember that you can follow us on all of our social media handles, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also on Twitter. Our Facebook, Instagram is Western Spring Television. Twitter is at WSTVNG. And you can also watch us live and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. That's that. Okay, we'll be back after this break.
Èdè Yorùbá jẹ́ ọ̀kan lára àwọn èdè tí wọ́n ń sọ ní agbègbè Niger Congo. Èdè Yorùbá gbajúgbajà ní àwọn orílẹ̀-èdè tó ń bẹ ní ẹkùn ìwọ̀ oòrùn ilẹ̀ adúláwọ̀. Ó kéré tán, àwọn ènìyàn bíi mílíọ̀nù 14 ló ń sọ èdè Yorùbá lónìí. Ètò akọ́mọlédè ló ń dé sójú ìwòran yín láti iléeṣẹ́ móhùnmáwòrán WSTV ìkànnì 150 channel 190 lórí StarTimes. Folúṣọ́ Ayaolúwagbémiga, ìyá ìjọ pèdèpèdè, ìyá akọ́mọlédè ló.
Thank you so much for staying with us. It's on to Morning Spring, and it's reaching you from Western Spring Television. You can check us out on YouTube at Western Spring Television, and do well to subscribe to our channel on that very platform. You can also follow us on all of our other social media handles. Instagram and Facebook is at Western Spring Television, and on Twitter is at WSTV_NG. And do well to also catch us on StarTimes DTT channel 190. Our guest is with us here in the studios. But just to give you a background, Emmanuel, for 3 consecutive days last week, there was a stinging rebuke from the presidency, some of his own aides, at governors in the land, accusing them of being responsible for the rising poverty in the land, of abandoning rural Nigeria, and of spending on there was a choice of word he used for some of those infrastructure in urban areas. Unnecessary projects there. That was by one of his ministers, Clement Agba. And then following up, the president himself. Practically, literally accused the governors of stealing local government funds.
Yes, and as we recall it, he just stopped short of mentioning names. He gave description.
Yes.
Said one of the governors is a lawyer and all of that. So he's just stopped short at calling names. But it was a really, really strong statement from the president, coming out by himself to make that known. That I am aware of the fact that some governors are diverting local government funds and stifling the local government as they were.
Well, so the governors also fired back, and they responded, accused the federal government of trying to shift responsibility, saying part of what's responsible for the rising insecurity, for the rising poverty in the land is because of insecurity, which they said is a primary responsibility of the government at the center, and that because farmers can no longer go to the farms, that has impacted largely on their ability to earn and survive. And they said, this is not our own fault, that's the fault of the federal government. They also use very strong words.
Yes, the religion of duty.
Yeah, the religion of duty on the part of the president and his own other aides. But let's look at those issues from different perspectives. Now, we're joined in the studio this morning by Mr. Komi Ademiluyi. He's a Prince of Ile-Ife. I don't know if he likes me to introduce him that way. He's a policy analyst. He's also the former chairman, editorial board of the Daily Independent newspapers. Thank you so much for joining us on Morning Spring this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, so tell me, what do you make of that back and forth? The stinging rebuke from the president and his ministers, and also the response, sort of fire for fire from the governors also. Who's actually responsible for poverty in Nigeria?
Well, I think we have to detach 2 issues. First of all, the first issue, very quickly, is the fact that the federal government itself is complicit because the government controls the monetary, the central government controls the monetary levers, and it has not ensured price stability. You cannot maintain living standards with a depreciating currency. So the federal government cannot run away from that. But the more important issues, if we now go back to the governors, is that the states in Nigeria, with the exception of maybe just 2 or 3, are very badly run entities. The cost structure of the states are ridiculous. Let me give you an example. It's actually a joke that came out of when I was doing National Youth Service a very long time ago. It was a friend of, it was somebody I got to know at the orientation camp, and he had studied at the University of California in Berkeley. He had this joke about the Nigerian who was in Sacramento, the capital of California, and he was looking for the government house where the governor lives. He was asking a policeman, he said, please take me to the government, show me how to get to government house. Hey, there's no government house. And then the police had to phone a psychiatrist that, look, this guy with a foreign accent is disturbing me. I think he's mentally ill. The joke about the story, right, is that California is the 6th largest economy in the world, if it was a separate country. But there's no government housing. If you get elected as governor of California, go and find a place to live. That's what the business of, there's no government house. No government it's a joke where you can imagine how long ago I did you. There's no government. The only person who has what you call an official residence in Nigeria, in California, is the Chief Judge, or Chief Justice, we call it Chief Judge here. But the 6th largest economy of California is bigger than that. Brazil is the 7th largest economy. France is the 8th largest economy. You have the 6th largest economy in the world. There's no official residence for the governor, the lieutenant governor, what we call deputy governor here. This is an anecdote. It was a joke. The guy says it so brilliantly. But the cost structure of the states in Nigeria, I'm surprised that they can do anything, which is why they're not doing anything. With the term special assistant, senior special assistant, special advisor, this whole appurtenances of power, the whole cost structure, I don't see any progress in most of the states. What progress they talk about commissioning of projects? Human development is not based on the commissioning of projects. It's based on health and education. After that, everything else falls into place. You know, put a water system here, put a primary school there. After a while, the branch of a bank will follow, put a primary health center. Come back in 15 years' time, and you'll be surprised at what you've said. But the cost, look at what has happened in this state now. I didn't even know we had so many quarters. Well, that's what you call it, quarters. And you look at the states, unless those videos are fictitious, that means that every 4 years, in a state that is not an epitome of buoyancy, every 4 years, you're going to be replacing sockets and electrical fittings and stuff. Personally, after I looked at what happened in Osun, I think you just scrap the whole idea of giving people quarters. Just be like California. If they elect you or they give you a post, phone an estate agent and sort out your accommodation. You can live under the bridge.
At the expense of the state, though?
Well, I suppose in a place like California, they give you an allowance to rent a house. You get what I mean? Not a mansion, but you know, the kind of allowance that you will get as a civil servant. But I don't think we can. You see, the thing is that the states themselves don't have the foggiest idea of what development is. The local governments do not work because they are programmed not to work. The local governments are there to service the needs of a whole mass of party apparatchiks. You know, jobs for the party apparatchiks who have to make a living because politics, or what we call politics, is the only avenue for existence in Nigeria, apart from religion. So
you're saying our structure is defective?
Completely. It doesn't make sense.
But I mean, so if you look at what the government, you know, I mean, what the minister about it, you know, even the federal government now, I mean, that through Clement Agba are saying what's responsible is because of the governor's lack of attention to the rural areas. I mean, the rural areas, I mean, that's where the bulk of Nigerians reside and live. He said they spend on unnecessary projects. They're doing flyover. It was particularly flyovers.
I mean, the flyover thing is just a clear example of what, in my time, they used to call the development of underdevelopment. Because if you look at a flyover, what is the cost? What is the benefit? If I was the governor of a state, don't worry, I'll never be If I was the governor of the state, right, the cost of that flyover, if you now use it to build rural roads, the effect is transformational in a way that a flyover can never be.
But is it also not development? I mean, so Wiki, for instance, is counting down to number 12.
You see, you are putting, well, I mean, you see, that just goes to the childishness of Wiki. You are putting, you're putting the cart before the horse. So if you build rural roads, first of all, you cut the amount of perishables substantially by 2/3, because a lot of food that is produced is wasted. So that affects the living standard of the producer, the farmer. If you build rural roads, right, you can evacuate the stuff better. Standard of living of the rural economy goes, and more important than that is that the evacuated produce can now feed agro-industries and other industries, creating more jobs. It is from the taxes from those jobs that you can now be building your flyovers. Okay, you build your flyovers now, or your project, you know, you like this word. How are you going to maintain those projects? With what revenue base? Whereas if you have built rural roads, a kilometer of rural roads has a multiplier effect. If you build those rural roads, if you know what you're doing, you should know what you're doing after you call yourself a government. You can now obtain the revenues from the jobs created, from the increases in economic activity, to build, and more importantly, since these flyovers are not tolled, to maintain them. You have to get a revenue generating base to build something. You are going to see the Wike is leaping up and down now that he has built 12. I mean, you should clap for him. You're a young person. I'm pulling your leg. I always pull your leg. In 10 years' time, you will take your son or your daughter to those places. What will be the state of those rural roads? What is the revenue base that Wike has created to maintain that rural road, so that when you and your child go on an excursion or holiday in 10 years, 10 years is not a long time. God sparing all our lives, you know. You see that they're putting the cart beyond. This is a misconception.
So you agree with the Minister of State for Budget that the governors are, you know,
the governors do not have a sensible interpretation of the development process. That is why you have this fixation with projects. And you know what project means? Project means padded contracts, you know, that kind of thing. Why are you not fixated with rural roads, with primary health centers, with water systems? These are the real development trajectories. Why are you not? Because, like I said, it's one thing to build a project, and you have to realize, you have to actually come into the conclusion that a lot of these projects, nobody is actually looking at the financial projection, the cost benefit. I mean, what were the tender systems? You say you are building projects. Were there transparent tender systems? Were they open? Did you get the best deal? Most of these things, virtually all of them, are not told. You get what I mean? If you don't toll a road or a flyover, whatever you call it, what is the basis for maintenance? You got to maintain something. Even your house, how much have you spent on changing bulbs in the last 2 months? You spent something. You've changed bulbs, you've changed, a whole lot of things. The federal government itself cannot get away with it, but we're talking about the states now. And the fact is, the matter is that the development paradigm that we are seeing in this country today, it's not going to develop anywhere. And I don't honestly think that it is actually meant to develop anywhere, because it's really just meant as part of the political economy of a group of people. You see, first of all, to have proper development paradigm, whatever the governors are saying, you must have checks and balances. What checks and balances do you have in any state? In a state, what you call a House of Assembly in this country, I can't see any exception, is actually a department of the governor's office. And the man you call a speaker is actually a senior special assistant on legislative matters. So the governor is not a speaker in the conventional constitutional interpretation of what a speaker is. So all these projects you are talking about, what kind of oversight do you have in any state House of Assembly in Nigeria? They do anything they are asked to do, which means that a lot of these projects are misconceived. They are not properly costed. There's no oversight as to the costing, and there will be no oversight as to the maintenance. The whole point of a development process is come back in 10 years' time and see what changes you. What change in 10 years' time is a flyover going to run, compared to the changes in 10 years' time that a rural road, rural medical centers, rural water systems, all those things are more profound in changes than any flyover.
So those should be what the governor should focus on.
The governor should focus on that, because that triggers off Look, if you have a proper economic model where revenue is increasing all the time, the private sector itself, as a business venture, can build a flyover and toll it and get this money, or build a flyover and use it to obtain tax credit. You get what I mean? That this is my business, I will build this flyover, but you give me tax credit over the next 15 years. That means the government gets a flyover without any, without, the government has not put down one money,
Committing
1 naira.
funds, yes.
It's just giving tax credit. That's what Dangote is doing in a lot of places. But to get to that stage at state level, you must have a revenue base. You must have thriving companies who can do that. Which thriving companies do you have in most of these states that can build a flyover, and then the government say, you boy, you try, go, okay, we'll give you tax credits and tax waivers for the next 12 years. We're not taking this development, because look, you cannot have this kind of political economy we're running in Nigeria, in which people hop from one party to another, in which the economy is based on sharing rather than production, on consumption rather than production, in which, you know, one of the absurdities is like, there was a governor about 3 weeks ago, I just wrapped it up about the absurdity of whatever we are doing in this country. The guy, he named as an achievement that he was opening or was he refurbishing, you'll have to fact check, the state liaison office in Abuja. And I thought to myself that this epitomizes why 133 million people are in poverty. Why do you have a state liaison office in Abuja doing exactly what? To go back to California, California remits to the central government in Washington $500 billion annually. In spite of remitting $500 billion annually to the central government, California had to do 4 or 5 months ago a special legislative session because the state had $800 billion in reserves. So they said, we can't just have $800 billion and we'll be looking at it, we'll be looking at credit alert every day. The thing has moved up. What are we going to do with this $800 billion? So they had to do a special legislative and say, this $800 billion, we're going to spend maybe, we'll keep $200 billion, which is more than many countries have. And then we spend $600 billion on this, on that, coding for children as young as 4 years old, so that when they come out in 16 years, new generation, you know, like a more competitive public university, you know, that kind of thing. That's what you are doing here with all. This California that remits $500 billion United States, what is Nigeria's foreign exchange reserve, to Washington every year, and still has 800. Where is the California State Liaison Office in Washington, D.C.? I want you to take me there. You know you can afford to give me.
So, you know, our own governors have a liaison office in Abuja.
And doing
they
what?
Also have
what's the economic
value? They also have in Lagos.
They also have in Lagos. I've seen it in Lagos, in Ikeja before. Now, what is the economic value of this your liaison office in Abuja and Lagos?
It's to take care of the governor when it comes to Abuja.
Thank you. Now, what funds? I mean, when the Western region built Western House, or the third line, but look at the generating base of Western House in Lagos. I used to work near there. I have friends who have law firms and stuff inside Western House till today. That's a building that's over 60 years old. You get what I'm saying? Now, this your liaison office in Lagos and Abuja. What's the cost benefit to the farmer in Ire? What value does it add to the state? It's an indulgence because the post-1966 constitution of this country is based on consumption. It's not based on the generation. That's why you call all this thing about building projects as if it's some new El Dorado, you suddenly found paradise. You're not talking about transiting the peasant farmer into commercial farming. You're talking about building projects. How do you sustain those? Like I said, somebody is crowning on about how he has built 12 flyovers. Go back in 12 years' time, in 10 years' time, and look at the state of those things. Because the man who is crying today and giving out all kinds of contracts to people, has he projected the maintenance cost year in, year out for the next 50 years? He has not.
All right, so we've seen the failure or the inability of state governors now to understand what development is, you know. But
I don't even think their job is to understand development.
Oh, because let's look at the response of the governors now to the federal government. The spokesperson of the NGF, Bello Bakindo, said, in his own words, that the federal government's dereliction of duty has also led to poverty and, you know, also mentioned insecurity. How is the federal government very much culpable in this?
The federal government is culpable, obviously. And like I first started, I wanted to detach two issues. First of all, the federal government is in incontrovertible control of the monetary levers. The first job of any rational government is price stability. Because without price stability, you cannot maintain living standards. If you don't maintain living standards, you cannot increase living standards. If you don't maintain living standards, more people will slide into poverty. So if the government, this is a classic case of the pot calling the kettle black. Because you yourself did not do the most essential thing. One, there must be price stability. How much, for example, has the South African rand depreciated over the last 11 years? Compare the depreciation, there's hardly been any of the rand. Compare it to the depreciation of the naira over the same amount. And then secondly, the governors are crying about internal. Of course, the central government has made a complete mess of internal security. Nobody is safe here. I mean, when I go to Lagos, I go by train on a wing and a prayer. But the fact is that the governors themselves haven't seen that the framework is a failure. The governors who control, don't let's deceive ourselves, they control the legislators. Why didn't they get the legislators to put together a constitutional amendment and get the necessary 2/3 to completely decentralize the internal security mechanism? They could have done it. They can't. How many, when Akeredolu talked about Amin Amotekun, this same person who is talking, the chairman of the NGF or whatever you call it, did he make a statement supporting Amin Akeredolu and mandating all the legislators from the states to go back to Abuja and produce a constitutional amendment to devolve policing powers so that Akeredolu and his fellow governors can arm Amotekun to take on banditries, to take on kidnapping? They didn't do that. These are people who want to have their cake, eat it, and keep it in the fridge at the same time. It does not, the statement is made that this guy made on behalf, presumably, of the other guy, is self-serving and opportunist. Because you didn't have to wait for the government, for federal government, which has abandoned its own responsibilities too, to attack you. All of what the man is saying is aforethought. You get what I'm saying? And frankly speaking, after this charade is over, we're not going to hear anything again next week. We'll have moved on to other issues and that kind of thing. Neither side is showing any serious there, but the governors are complicit because in spite of the failings of the central government, the failings are obvious in monetary policy, failings are obvious in not having the common sense to know that this internal security system has outgrown its time and has to be changed. But the governors themselves, at the end of the day, given whatever little they have, how has it translated into attacking poverty and maintaining living standards? It has not.
All right, so I'd like to read to you 2 paragraphs of that statement. I'd like you to interrogate them. The NGF stated, quote, "It is important to put on record the progress made by state governors in the administration of their state, which have witnessed tremendous progress in recent times. Governors have undertaken projects where they, in conjunction with their people, deem them fit for purpose." That's one. Now, down towards the end of the statement, quote again, "How can a defenseless rural population maintain a sustainable lifestyle of peace and harmony when their lives are caught prematurely and they wallow permanently in danger? How does a minister whose government has been unable to ensure security, law, and order have the temerity to blame governors. End of quotes, the NGF said.
I've already answered the second part of his self-serving proposition. Why didn't he, all these years, when he saw that the rural population of his state was exposed and they were being, and the rural economy was disrupted, which is true, why didn't he call a meeting of the NGF and get them to sponsor a constitutional amendment so that the states, as we once had under the constabulary system in the First Republic, the states can take over policing? Why didn't he do that? Would they have arrested him? He has immunity as a governor. If all the 36 governors of Nigeria got together and said, we are mandating our legislators, the president cannot veto it because they can override the veto. If they were serious people, why didn't they do this? They didn't start last week to know that farmers in the rural areas were endangered. It didn't start last week. It didn't start last year. It didn't start 3 years ago. You knew 4 or 5 years ago that the rural economy was being battered and it was going down. So why is he making this self-serving statement? Nobody should be, conned into the. And then the first part of what I consider to be really opportunistic intervention by whoever this fellow is. If he's so sure of himself, he should allow independent observers to conduct opinion polls, to speak to people and say, in his own state, and in every state in this country across the board, and ask the simple question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? He knows that the overwhelming majority of the people of his state, they might give them money to Dikoko Sebe. The overwhelming majority of the people of his state, since they are sane, can never say that they are better off today than they were 4 years ago.
But I mean, in what Emmanuel read, so he said that those projects were done in conjunction with the people. That
Which people?
They are people in their states.
People are extras in a movie. You get what I mean? You mean the man did a referendum and consulted the people about the flyover is building or whatever is built, the Grandois, White Elephant projects is built. He did it now. The people are supposed to have representatives in the houses of assembly. That's what you mean. They have transferred, their sovereignty, part of their sovereignty to the member representing whatever central in the House of Assembly. The governor knows that the House of Assembly are just, they're just legislative aids to the governor. You you and I live in Nigeria. We have lived in Nigeria since this republic started. We are not foreigners or expatriates. You call what you have in Nigeria as legislators. These are special assistants. He knows what he's talking about. If the people genuinely, you say that you have legislators, the legislators, what oversight function did they do? Did you have a proper tenders board? A procurement system in which any secondary school student can use the Freedom of Information Act to look at the projects you are doing, how many companies tendered, at what cost? The House of Assembly is crowding about, presumably, because the people can only be understood from the transfer of their sovereignty to the House of Assembly. Did they have any input into the projects you are building, the costing? The 15 companies tender in a transparent way for these projects. Where are the documents to show it? And where the Houses of Assembly, when they carried on in this process, to me, this is intellectual dishonesty of the worst order. This is just, I live in Nigeria, so does Emmanuel. Nobody can be, not even a primary school student can believe what this man is saying.
But so, when you look at the other part of the pushback of the governors, that, this is just federal government shifting responsibility for its own failings. And they said, you made a campaign promise of lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. And I remember the president also making that promise. And he said, so you failed in that, are you now pushing it back to us?
Certainly the federal government is just looking for a scapegoat for its utter failings. Because, first of all, I never believed that they had the capacity to take 100 million people out of poverty. But they could have done a bit more. Look at Lula da Silva has been re-elected. He's going to take over on the 2nd of January. In 8 years, And this debunks the myth of your governors. In 8 years, Lula da Silva pulled out 40 million people out of poverty. That's one of the reasons. That's the major reason why he's back again. But more important than that is that Lula da Silva, at no time in those 8 years, did he have up to 40% of the members of the National Assembly in his party. Which means that you can actually do a lot with, he never had for one day a majority in the National Assembly. One day like this that the Workers' Party had 50%. No, not half a day. But look at what he did. These people crying now, you have the National Assembly, you have 2/3 majority. Sometimes there's hardly any member of the opposition. In the state assemblies. What do you do? Of course, the central government could not have pulled 100 million people out of poverty under this defective constitution. But the fact of the matter is that did they even pull 1 million people out of poverty? It's debatable. So what we're seeing now is a terrible. Look, put it this way, these people are hurling bricks at each other. What's he going to do with the person thinking of trying to buy fuel down the road? Apart the fuel queue coming to your radio station. And it's horrendous because the guy at the back of that queue, I was joking with the other person in the car. Now, what if this guy, he's going to take this guy up till about 11 o'clock before he gets to the station. What if he gets to the station, as had happened to my wife before in Lagos, they said they ran out of fuel after queuing for about 2.5 hours. But the fact of the matter is that, what has this got to do with that guy there queuing up for fuel? What the brickbat between the federal government and the state governors, what's it got to do with his life?
But, okay, so because of our time, Mr. Ademile, if I ask you to look at it, which of these tiers of government, has more impact on the people or has the capacity or capability or the potential to lift Nigerians out of poverty? Is it the state? Is it the local? Is it the federal government?
In an ideal situation, in a correct situation, there'll never be an ideal. The local governments are the pivotal players. They're where all the aspects of the culverts, the rudimentary commodities to store produce and stuff, the primary health centers, the primary schools, the water systems. That's where all the action is. But the local government in Nigeria, therefore, are parishes. There are jobs for people, because no jobs are big. Let me give you an example. Look at the quality of people in local governments at the time when Nigeria was a country. You tend to forget that the best of a generation in the early 1950s, people like Bode Thomas, Rotimi Williams, those kind of people, they started their life as local government councillors and chairmen of local government. Look at what is going on overseas today. Some of the outstanding surgeons, lawyers, in a place like the United Kingdom, they're chairmen of local government. The equivalent of, say, Ganifa Ahimi or Lisa Agbakugba or GT Ogunye or an eminent physician. They're chairmen of local government. Is that the kind of quality you have here? The local government in Nigeria, first of all, the governor of the state, who absurdly is in control of the local government, instead of the local government having its financing directly from that and having powers of taxation for a meaningful local government system. The governor of the state is not interested in any local government. He's not. He wants to pilfer their funds to maintain a retinue of all kind of people they call senior special assistants. Or
so you agree with the president that he is stealing?
Certainly. The local government. Okay, if they why did 25 states reject the local government autonomy bill? If they passed if they did the constitutional amendment to give the local government autonomy, which 25 states have rejected, would it have ended civilization as we know it?
But I've had arguments that it flies in the face of the concept of federalism.
It doesn't fly in any face.
That you should have local government autonomous of the state. That it only recognizes the federal, the center, and the subnationals.
Yes, ideally the local governments will be created by the state.
Yes.
In the sense that, for example, if you take, we've turned into a big deal now. Because if you take somewhere like, I was studying it when I was writing an article for somebody, and I was surprised that New York State has 10,000 local governments.
10,000.
Not 10, 10,000. That's
those are counties.
Counties, yeah, but they're states. I mean, they're local governments. They're local governments, because that means that Aleku Odo and whatever can band together and say, we want to form our own local government. That's not what these governors are thinking of. What they are doing are self-service, because ideally, the local government has nothing to do with any central government. Can Biden know the names of local governments when there are 10,000 local governments in one state? Since Biden is not a computer now. But you see, that's not what these people want. They definitely, the local government should not have anything to do with the center. It should be a state affair. A few people can band together, have a referendum, and has to be given their own local government. But that's not what the governors have in mind. Because that local government system is actually independent of the state governor. The state governor just wants a local government system that will be pilfering them, but they are not being honest with the people, either the central government. But in the state or the local government, the governors of the states are much more cooperative. They don't want a functioning local government system because, look, most of these people were not elected to develop anywhere. They're part of a political economy, of consumption, of sharing there. If they were real politicians, of which I've seen very few in the last 30 years, there won't be 133 million people in poverty. It's not possible.
Well, Mr. Komiade Milu, we leave it at that. We do hope that we'll get more and more people out of poverty. But we thank you so much for joining us on Morning Spring this morning. Mr. Komiade Milu is a former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Independent newspapers, also a policy analyst. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's take this short break. When we return, I will also flip the conversation looking at the other side, as well as regards to local government administration in Nigeria. We'll be back.
Èdè Yorùbá jẹ́ ọ̀kan lára àwọn èdè tí wọ́n ń sọ ní agbègbè Niger Congo. Èdè Yorùbá gbajúgbajà ní àwọn orílẹ̀-èdè tó ń bẹ ní ẹkùn ìwọ̀ oòrùn ilẹ̀ adúláwọ̀. Ó kéré tán, àwọn ènìyàn bíi mílíọ̀nù 14 ló ń sọ èdè Yorùbá lónìí. Ètò akọ́mọlédè ló ń dé sójú ìwòran yín láti iléeṣẹ́ móhùnmáwòrán WSTV ìkànnì 150 channel 190 lórí StarTimes. Folúṣọ́ Ayaolúwagbémiga, ìyá ìjọ pèdèpèdè, ìyá akọ́mọlédè ló kọ tèmi. Yorùbá dùn púpọ̀, Yorùbá ò lè kú, Yorùbá ò lè parun. Tiwa làṣà, tiwa lèdè, tiwa nìṣẹ̀ṣe, akọ́mọlédè.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West, and Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around you. Yup, we've got you covered because your girls got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join me, Chocolate Cassie, on Eccentric as we take you into every bit of the juiciest news, fashion, music, movie updates, and other trending conversations. Together on the show, we'll get personal with your favorite celebrities via phone call, Zoom, or even live here in the studio. Eccentric will be shown on your TV screen on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on StarTimes.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Morning Spring is what you're watching from Western Spring Television, StarTimes DTT, channel 190, and also on all of our social media handles, all our social media pages, particularly on YouTube at Western Spring Television. Do well to subscribe. Click on the subscribe button on that channel. You can also check us out on Instagram and Facebook at Western Spring Television and follow what we do on Twitter at WSTV_NG. Our second guest is with us in the studios this morning, Comrade Lanre Fadaunsi. He's a retired director, worked in the local government here in Osun State. He's also the Southwest coordinator of the Big Tent Campaign Council. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us on Morning Spring this morning, sir.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be in your studios.
Nice let's pick your brains as regards to functionality and the importance of the local government to the development of Nigeria and taking people out of poverty. So you heard the president last week practically accusing the governors of stealing local government funds. But with your experience, having served at the highest level there, how important is the local government to actually a functional Nigeria and indeed taking people out of poverty?
As a matter of fact, that's the way to go. That's the only place that solves that problem. If you're having projects, let's just take it from that angle. If you have projects in the local government and you have to award contract, there has to be people within. The chairman lives within the local government. His councillors live within the local government. The people know their homes. They know their brothers. They know their parents. So to mess up at that level becomes difficult. But who can go to the state government lodge at the capital? Very few people. So the moment we mortgaged the freedom of the local government, we removed government from service to the people. And that's the truth. In the past, people who led local governments were people who genuinely loved to impact the lives of their people. And they must have been doing that at their private levels. And the people will say, look, you are supposed to be our leader. That's how local government chairmen emerged some 30, 40 years ago. But now, political leadership somewhere will just pick somebody. I just bring some guy from London to come and be chairman of a local government. He hardly knows the streets. That's where we lost it. That was where the disconnect came. And a lot of political leaders are listening to me. They knew they were culpable and part of what caused the crisis in local government.
So, I mean, Mr. Fadaunsi, we have sort of a generation of people who hardly, even understand or recognize the functions or duties of the local government because, like you said, it's barely existent again. Tell me, what are those things that ordinarily should be the functions of the local government that will impact on the lives of the people living in that locality?
For any government that has executive, the first principal function is the security of lives and property.
Is the local government involved?
At the federal level,
yes,
state level, and the local government level.
Is the local government involved in security?
Yes. The head of security in the local government, the chief security officer in the local government is the local government chairman. The DPO comes to the local government. The NSCDC comes to the local government. They have a security council in the local government as well.
There's a security council at the local government?
Yes. In the past. I don't know why they are, because now everything is like just reflecting from the state, but that's not how it was. The councillors know their wards. At the ward level, they hold meetings. And so strangers do not come into communities and the local government will not be informed formally. The palaces will know. You see, but along the line, the courts, by recreating poverty in another form, people now have to look for bread and butter. And they left the local government with their problems when they were abandoned. It was an abandonment of the local government system that brought us to this wrong bottom of the ladder. And it's unfortunate. In the past, I tell you, in the past, I call a Irepoju local government, about 6 local governments were the main source of egg production in their local government areas. And the prices are made to be cheaper than what obtains in town. And it's from the agric department. These are some of the things, records are there. But hello, as a matter of fact, I doubt if there is any poultry in any local government in Osun State again. That's unfortunate. The agric departments had tractors that with minimal money, people came to rent from the local government and they could cultivate more rather than using hoes. Look at that aspect again. The local government is a basic place where growth and development can be fast-tracked. But along the line, it was jettisoned. And gradually, you can now look at something like that 15 years down the line. The damage is done. And it's not just here, it is everywhere. And that's why it is suspect when you see local government elections and one party is winning every local government. Is that really an election? Because all of those who are the political leadership at that level could not have performed well or perfectly enough to have been returned. So we lost it. And that's why it gives me joy when people are talking about let the local governments be free. They don't need much. I'll tell you something. If a contract is awarded in a local government, mostly those who will get it, yes, if there's a party in power, you can't put opposition there. You put your people there. So, but when you want to buy cement, you buy from those who sell within to do government projects. When you want to allocate supplies of issues for that project, you take from that community when the local governments were doing their things. But along the line, they took over at some level and stopped all those activities, and they were bringing contractors from even as far as outside the state. And so those ones, some will just rent a flat and get some staff, so their own bricklayers will work for the whole year. Bricklayers in those local governments will fold their hands and be watching government projects going on. The social contract is lost when you remove power from the local government administration to serve their own people.
So you're saying there is minimal activity going on at the
they are not even allowing the funds of the local government. You see, if you look at the records, a local government collects 100 million every month, 200 million every month, and you begin to wonder, has 100 million passed through this community this month? It doesn't go there. There was a time people were going to collect money from Abiri for jobs done at the local government level. And so people don't buy steel from those who are selling steel, wire, and stuffs to do government projects in those local governments. What turns the economy around is a fund that lines the pockets of people, not the ones in the billions or in bank vaults. It doesn't turn the economy around. I can wire 1 billion naira from my phone. But you see, if you pay 10,000 to 2,000 people for work done at the local government level, from his 10,000, will buy a bowl of rice, or will buy pepper 500 naira. That money is going around. Everybody is happy. But a situation where one individual wants to do a government project through a link to the people at the top, it brings a trailer from Lafarge Cement or Dangote to do a project in Orolu local government. So those selling cement at Orolu will sit and be watching, and it is their local government's money that will be used to pay the contractor who came in from outside. We need that system back so that people can get their lives back. It has really destroyed a lot. And thank God a lot of people are discussing it. Thank God your station is picking on that issue now so that we can solve it once and for all.
All right. The 1999 Constitution introduced the State Joint Local Government Accounts, the SJLGA.
Yeah.
And some people say that undermines the attempt, by the reform of 1976 to accord financial autonomy to local government, and that the creation of that SJLGA has frustrated attempts to establish the third tier status of local government. Do you agree with that?
Perfectly. And more importantly, I was still in service at that time, and I'll tell you how that problem arose. Now, some local governments could not pay salaries, especially of teachers, because local government is within the purview of the local government to pay primary school teachers, to pay primary school pensioners, because the primary school falls under the local government administration. Now, urban centers, I recall, like Ife Central, Oshobo local government, Ilesha, they could not pay salaries. By the time you remove salaries from their allocation, it becomes zero. That was what encouraged the joint account thing, that when you pool the resources of the local governments together, you need to remove the salaries of primary school teachers so that every local government will first of all be able to meet that need.
Sorry, just some clarification. So why were those urban local governments unable to pay teacher salaries?
Political. I am a commissioner I was invited to be a commissioner in the state government, and I have a wife who happens to be a teacher. I won't tell my wife to go to Ilesha local government where I come from. I want her to be in Osogbo. We oversaturate urban centers. You get the drift. And the rural areas, people don't want to go there. I tell you, check the records. The local government with the highest amount of money in those days were Okela, Ora Okela axis. Ifon is a one monolithic environment of one major town. And so people want to go there because there's a lot of money after they must have paid their school teachers. But some places like Osogbo, Olorunda, and others, you get zero.
Because of the number of teachers.
Oh, saturation. Everybody that has link and connection wants to bring their people to the center. And instead of enforcing the reality that, look, it can't be like that. If you're joining, you must be ready to serve wherever you are posted. That could have actually done. But so the commitment to really serve was not there. It was selfish people, and it caused that problem. But he was able to solve it in a way when they were doing the joint, but it now became subject to abuse. People inflate their records and figures so that what will come to that local government by way of, okay, for your teacher's salaries, we're giving you 10 million. Whereas the actual fact of it is that they don't need more than 5 million. So the local government administration, through the back door, is taking 5 million extra because of wrong records. But thank God for technology. All that is history now. In those days, 20, 30 years back, we don't have the kind of technology we have now. Technology deployed, all those problems will be solved. And so now that we have technology at our disposal, the issue of joint account should gradually be made a thing of the past, because that's what is being used to now reduce what gets to local government. You can imagine a local government that's supposed to get like 100 million from the federal allocation, at the end of the day getting 5 million. Because you have to remove 5% for traditional council. You have to, so by the time they are making all those deductions, it comes to like nothing.
Aside the state, sorry, madam, aside the state joint, the state local government joint accounts, is there any other way that a governor can dip his hands into a local government? Because the graphic example that the president gave was that he knows, and just like when I said in a opening, he just fell short of naming names. He gave instances of governors collecting 100 million, asking, the local government collects 100 million and governors take 50 million, and the local government also pay salaries and then fritter away the rest. Are there other ways that governors commandeer or take local government funds aside the state joint account?
I think I'm happy for one thing. It's like, in a way, it's like God wants to solve a lot of problems in Nigeria, because the president is talking now and the governors are replying. You understand? God just wants to solve that problem because there's too much poverty in the land, whereas it's not supposed to be. A lot of things were introduced, but the moment the government of the day knows it's coming from their own party people, they looked away. Largely, they looked away. I recall in Osun, we've had governments, and some will take like 50%, like you were saying, out of that 100, and send the 50. It's bad, right? But it's better than when traditional roles of the local government are actually taken away from the local government.
Like what?
Like roles? Payment of salaries that you were talking about. At some point in Osun here, all resources of the local government are deployed and used on its behalf by Osun State. I can say it, I'm not lying about that. Because even taxes and rates that were within the purview of local governments to collect, to be able to run, were taken over and they couldn't do jack.
So local government have the right to collect some taxes,
and rates, yes, from local government. But those functions were removed from them. Now, look at it this way. The payment of salary is supposed to come from the Directorate of Finance in every local government.
Or local government staffers?
for the workers and their teachers. It's supposed to come from them. But suddenly the power to do that was removed. A body was put at Aberi called CHAMS, collecting money from each local government every month for paying local government salaries. Whereas we have, I'm telling you, we have chartered accountants. Most of those local governments, of course, before the regional administration, moved all of them to states as state officers.
It moved up away from the local government as well.
And the local government has a scheme of service nationally.
Like separate from the state?
Yes. A scheme of service that, to the glory of God, happens to be only Nigerian that address the panel that do the last document for that scheme of service. And what was my position? We had level 16 medical doctors in the local government system. We had PhD holders who were directors in the local government system, and admin officers at that time held on to be the most senior officers. So you have admin officers on level 13, 14, acting as the leader, calling on level 16 medical doctor, expensively trained, to come and give him reports. So my position then, and the position of everybody, was that, look, this is injustice. That they came into the system through primary health care does not now reduce them and subjugate their persons.
Now, was he addressed then?
That was where we came to the idea of head of local government administration. Head of service in the state. Head of service at the federal. And so we had medical doctors, we had engineers, we had agri directors who became heads of local government administration.
That role initially was director of personnel.
Yeah.
So the director of personnel was scrapped. It
was not scrapped.
Okay.
The head of local government is the most senior director.
So it could be anybody other than an administrator.
Then all other directors will now, on that organogram, get
so the director of personnel is an administrator.
Yeah.
But
for finance, administers finance. For agri, but is an overriding director.
The most
now
senior.
becomes the head of local government administration. But when that government came, removed all of them above level 15 to the states. Whereas the scheme of service allowed for head of local government administration. You get it? So by that, you now made local government the most senior there, like level 14. At that level, responsibilities below what they're supposed to, above what they're supposed to do, were given to them. And so they could easily accede to whatever demands the government is making of them. There is financial memorandum. There are financial documents that tells you, if you want to do this, this is how you go about it. If you want to do projects, the chairman has an approving limit. If he wants to do something above his approving limit, he approaches his council, which is the councillors, to approve for him. But if it gets to an amount like 2 million, then the entire council must come to the state government for approval, but they must execute their project themselves. But all that was just swept under the carpet, and they took over completely. And that was how, here, at least as far as Osun is concerned, that was how the local government became zero. Even your salaries is not within your purview. You just wait till it comes.
Well, so we need to go, but it's good for you to just respond to this. Those who say, well, it's good to blame the governors and the state, but that the local government also became a cesspool of corruption. That it was like money comes in, if the state government takes a part, then the remainder is just spent as they wish. That the local government chairman began to marry many wives and then spend local government funds as they wish. How do you respond to that in just a minute?
In a minute, I'm telling you that is not true, because there are structures to strictures to correct whatever are problems. There are internal audit systems, there are external audit systems. The internal audit is within. So if the internal auditors cannot really checkmate, even the chairman that wants to go wrong, the external auditors come. So there's a collusion. So making or laying it, I'm telling you, in the local government system of Osun, I don't know if he's still in service, there was an engineer who, if he collects money for, I'm saying this because I want us to look at the good ones and make them the examples we need. If money remains 20,000 naira on a 200 million project, it takes it back to treasury. It does not steal money. So if you see such people, encourage them. If he's from a community, make him the chairman. You will see development. Let's pick the good ones. Let's not gain on circle of corruption. Hello, an individual in Nigeria was accused of 100 billion fraud. He's supposed to be a public officer, is he not? You understand? So, I mean, does a local government get $1 billion even in 10 years? Let's be sincere with ourselves. These things, corruption is at its own level. If some people are doing oil and gas fraud of 700 million a daily, look at local governments, because that is where we see them. They live with us. We know their father, we know their mother, so we know their limits. That's why people are saying somebody he doesn't have 20,000 before. Now that he has 100,000 in his pocket, he must be stealing. Whereas somebody can just write it with a pen at the state, at the federal, and take 5 million, 10 million in a day.
Mr. Larry Fadon, so we need to go now. But I'd like to thank you for coming on the program. We definitely need to revisit this issue as we hope that we'll get the
more so that we can solve this problem.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Larry Fadon is retired director in the Local Government Service Commission, in the local government system. And is also the Southwest Zonal Coordinator of the Big Tent Campaign Council. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Well,
thanks for having me.
That's the interview part. We'll go now, and Emmanuel will come back with what's trending. What's trending today, Emmanuel?
Manifestos and
okay. So that'll be releasing. Or fight in Parliament?
But not in Nigeria.
Oh, I see. Oh, we no longer, was in Senegal.
Yeah, we no longer fight now. We just steal. Don't fight anymore.
All right. So that's the show today. Emmanuel will be back with what's trending. Good morning.
Here are 5 amazing fun facts I bet you never knew about Christianity.
Number 1, there are over 2.4 billion Christians worldwide.
Amazing fun fact number 2. The Bible is one of the best-selling books of all time, with more than 100 million copies sold every year.
Most Christians believe in heaven and hell.
The Bible is the most translated book in the world, with more than 3,000 languages.
Amazing fun fact number 5. Most Christians throw science out of the window without realizing that most scientists are Christians. Hello, I am Pastor Steve Akinwumi.
And I am Dr. Adeoye Oyewole.
Join us as we highlight and discuss day-to-day issues pertaining to the day-to-day living of every Christian.
Issues in Christendom shows every Sunday on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on StarTimes.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what-ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewa,
and your sports Amazon, Nengi Enes.
On this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on StarTimes.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
Evelyn.
Hello and welcome to Spring Trends on Western Spring Television. It's another beautiful, beautiful week. Monday, the 5th of December, 2022. 20 days to Christmas, chicken and jollof. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Do not forget to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. And on Twitter, it's at WSTV_NG. You can watch us live and subscribe to our YouTube at Western Spring Television. On the show today, we begin on the political scene. Just yesterday, presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, popularly known as Peter Obi, in the eastern part of the country, revealed his manifesto. And I'd like to show you 7 points from that manifesto before we begin to take the comments. Now, right on the screen, you can see the 7-point agenda there. Number 1 is securing and uniting Nigeria. Number 2 is legal and institutional reforms. And number 3 is human capital development. Number 4 is physical infrastructure. Number 5, strengthening foreign policy. Number 6, diversion from oil dependency. And number 7 is food security. And if we go to the next slide, you can see the commitment. Our commitment is to offer honest and competent leadership to deliver 7 priorities. You can see to secure Nigeria, end banditry, shift emphasis from consumption to production, and restructure the polity through effective legal and institutional reforms. Leapfrog Nigeria into the 4th industrial revolution. Build expansive and world-class infrastructure for efficient power supply. Number 6, enhance the human capital of Nigerian youth for productivity and global competitiveness. And number 7, conduct an Afrocentric diplomacy that protects the right of Nigerian citizens abroad and advance the economic interest of Nigeria and Nigerians' business in a changing world. That's the summary of the manifesto. Now let's see what people are saying about that manifesto. We take the very first comment from Twitter this morning. Let's see the first comment. That person is talking about Peter Obi's manifesto. And what is the person saying? NSARS Gassam 101 says, "Dear at Peter Obi, I've taken my time to read through this 72-page manifesto. It's possible our pact with Nigerians. For the first time, we have a detailed, workable document. The highlight of the pact is revolution and the power industry. Quite detailed." That's the very first comment there. We move on to the next comment on Peter Obi's manifesto. This is TSA Connecticut says, "I want to pontificate one thing noticed about our pact with Nigerians, the comparative advantage of states and regions, from leveraging on the vast arable land in the north to the crude oil in the south. At Peter Obi, may God use you for a new Nigeria, the Kanshimbila Dam, 40 megawatts project." You have that comment on Peter Obi's manifesto. We have the next comment from Modukwe. Modukwe had earlier said that the Obi Dati manifesto specifies executive bills that will be sent to the National Assembly, not just promises without specifying how or what the executive's role will be in achieving the result. But this should remind us that vote wisely also applies to NAS Nigeria candidate. Now, the next her comment now says, it clearly outlines the priorities and how they will go into about achieving them in detail. Which bills to pass, projects to be funded, restructuring to be done, even covers pending bills that Buhari has refused to sign and that PO would sign. Quite thorough. And of course, our very last comment this morning on the show for the Obi manifesto says, Public Policy 101. Having spent the last 1 hour to copiously peruse this just released 72-page manifesto of His Excellency at Peter Obi, entitled "It's Possible, Our Pact with Nigerians," among other things, I must point that PO listens to the yearnings of over 215 million hapless Nigerians. Away from Nigeria, we move on to rumble in Parliament. Rumble in Parliament. Now, let me quickly show you let me quickly explain to you what happened in Parliament. If you can see what's on your screen right now, the Senegalese Parliament descended into chaos as a lawmaker hit a female colleague over perceived insult towards an influential pro-opposition religious leader. According to AFP, the lawmakers were deliberating on the Justice Ministry's budget for 2023 when the fight broke out. An opposition member of parliament slapped legislator Ami Ndiaye over her remarks, and she responded by throwing a chair at him and then fell to the ground. A fist fight then erupted among members of parliament before the speaker suspended the session. Now let's see that video of what happened in Senegal. Very quickly by throwing a chair. You can see she misses that target, and then chaos, utter chaos right there in Senegal. This just reminds us of something. I want to show you something towards the end of the video. Because of that slap, something happened to the woman. And I'd like you to see, you can see she's fighting for her dignity there. You don't just slap people. This is a house, this is an assembly where you have lawmakers, and then they're slapping and fighting. You can see members of the EMT coming to carry the woman out. She apparently fainted after being slapped. Now let's see what Nigerians are saying about that particular incident in Senegal. It does remind us of something that we have here in Nigeria. But James O. Muyeto says, our own here no fit throw chair again for many years back now. They don't chop belly full, rich neck. Now sleep, they did sleep for parliament here. Remember, there was a time where the Nigerian parliament was all about fight and fight. To take the next comment from Condoriamo, says the female MP drag him to the temple of Valencia. You can see dragging each other, they're slapping and fighting. That's still on Twitter. Next comment, Empress Cheesy says, now so the man go to beat his wife for house, something that can be overlooked. Look at him embarrassing himself. On a normal day, he don't suppose no say we women must talk. So that's saying that the man will probably be a wife beater. We will never know. We may never find out. The next comment from Jagumolu says the biggest threat to Africa is the replacement of our original religion with Islam and Christianity. But somehow Christians have gained mastery of the religion and now export it to Europe and Americas, but yet to get mastery of Islam. How do we make lemon? How do we make lemonade out of this lemon? And the next comment, the very last one on that particular story there, says, just saw a video of fight in Senegalese parliament on Al Jazeera. This is not the first time this is happening in Africa. Tell me why other races won't look down on the black race when we all behaving like animals at any slight provocation. That's rumble in parliament in Senegal. Now let's come back to Nigeria on the political scene. Over the weekend, something was trending. Someone was trending. And that person is popular actor Ebun Oloyede, also known as Olaiya Igwe. What did this man do that put him in the news? If you can check on your screen now, actor Olaiya Igwe strips naked and prays at the beach for Tinubu's victory. Because of some regulations, we cannot show you that video, but I'd like you to see the comments that people have about that video. President Eniola Daniel says someone would do this for 3 reasons. 1, madness. 2, money. 3, clout. And I think the appropriate reason is money, because I don't think Olaiya Igwe is experiencing any mental breakdown. Mr. Lukman got a car from MC Oluomo. He can do better. Now, Shegun Adebayo says, what could be wrong with Olaiya Igwe? You stripped your whole self naked in the name of support for Tinubu. Can Sheyi Tinubu or any of his daughters do same for their father? I am speechless. Words fail me. You'll be fine, though. Next comment is from Adene Komayowa, says, the same Olaiya Igwe that we grew up to respect has reduced himself to ridicule. God help us to be very financially stable in our years of retirement. And the next comment says, that Olaiya Igwe video hit me bad. It's as if it's my dad. It hit me bad because I remember watching Olaiya as a kid from Iru Elshin to Tioluwanile. Hundreds of movies he's done. So painful to see, despite all these decades of hard work, he's going naked for politics. And Dotun Energy Guard says the video of Olaiya Igwe going butt naked is despicable and disgusting. It is okay to support whoever you choose, but even to the person you are doing that for, they will be appalled by that level of filth. Your maturity should have a place in history. This is low. And that's what we have for you on Spring Trend this morning. From Peter Obi's manifesto to the Royal Rumble in the Senegalese parliament and to the Nollywood icon going butt naked to campaign for his candidate. So many interesting things happening in Nigeria and all over Africa. We'll be here tomorrow, December 6th, Tuesday, to bring you more stories trending, who is trending, what is trending, why they are trending, and what people are saying about the who, what, and why. My name is Emmanuel Ujadigele. You can follow me on Twitter at EM_Ujadigele, and don't forget to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook and Instagram at Western Spring Television. On Twitter, it is